Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. Another video. I think I say every time I open a video up. I'll sit you guys down right here on my porch because whenever I do stuff with photography, gear related, I like to share it with you. And today is no exception. You guys know all last week, I shot with the Sigma 56mm f1.4 for the reasons I mentioned in the video, and that lens was really sharp and really crisp. And so this week I wanted to shoot with nothing but the 25mm f1.4 Leica lens. This lens is an old lens for Micro Four Thirds, but it's supposed to be one of the better lenses still. And it's at standard focal length. It's at Nifty 50. It's the premium version of the Nifty 50. You can get the Olympus 25 1.8, the 25 1.7. There's a whole host of other third-party 25mm lenses. There's like the Olympus Pro lens, and there's this guy, which kind of fills in the little gap between like the super expensive premium and the basic $100, $150 25mm lens. Got this used for like $300-ish or something like that. Anyways, the point being, as I put it on the camera yesterday and started taking some photos, and I noticed a couple photos seemed to be a little bit soft, and I thought to myself, it's probably just my perception, but I did just come from that 56, and that 56 is really sharp. I tend to shoot all my Micro Four Thirds lenses wide open, or close to wide open, unless I'm doing landscape or something like that and I want the deeper depth of field, because I like to keep the ISO as low as possible. And then with Micro Four Thirds, 1.4 is like a 2.8 depth of field, which I think is a pretty good depth of field while keeping the ISO low. If you guys know what I'm talking about, the deeper depth of field on Micro Four Thirds can actually be a really a good advantage, especially if you're trying to keep the ISO values low but not be too shallow. Anyways, nonetheless, I was looking at some photos and I was like, sometimes they seem soft when I shoot at 1.4 wide open. And then I thought to myself, a couple weeks ago I shot with this bad boy right here, the Leica LUMIX 20mm f1.7. Now this little pancake lens is regarded as one of the must-haves on Micro Four Thirds because not only of its size, the 40mm focal length equivalent on full frame is also a good equivalent focal length, and it's really sharp. It's a little slow to focus at times, but nonetheless, this lens for $250 is absolutely fantastic. So I was looking through some old photos I took with this a few weeks ago, and I said, man, those colors were really contrasting, it was sharp, and I feel like this 25 is rendering different. Is it that much different? So instead of just like making some wild opinion and go on forums and be like, oh, I noticed the difference, I decided to take some photos of the same subject today between rain, it was raining all day, and show you guys the difference. Now what I did is I shot everything exactly the same, except for, of course, the lens. So the lenses are all wide open, so 1.7 versus 1.4. They're shot from the exact same spot. The difference in the framing is going to be lens difference, so I shot from the exact same spot with my focus point in the same exact area in the camera, in the frame, on the same exact part of the subject. So they're exactly identical there. Also, I shot in manual mode, so the aperture, again, wide open, the ISO as low as possible, and I adjusted only the shutter speed to make up for the difference in 1.4 versus 1.7 and the light coming through the lens. So essentially all identical. Again, I shot this in JPEG, straight out of camera, no adjustments, portrait profile on an EM5 Mark III. So I took out as many variables as I can. Of course, all these tests are not perfect and there definitely have flaws to them, but I wanted to get that out here and show you guys the difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show both photos. There's 5 random, just generic subjects. I'm going to show those 5 subjects, one, then the other, and then side by side, and then move on. And one of those is a portrait. I'll come back to that in just a second. But I want you to pay attention to a couple things. Not only the focal length difference, if you're interested in these two lenses and you want to get one or the other, but also the colors, the contrast, and the sharpness. So I'll play these right now, and then I'll come back to you guys in just a minute. So hopefully you guys saw some difference between the two. I want to talk about my findings and a couple thoughts. The pictures weren't overly interesting. They're just of things I saw, like my back porch, that have some color or some pop to them and some contrast. And I wanted you guys to see how the lens is handling those different. I want to point out two things. One, of course, well, let's say three things. Three things. One, how the framing is. I actually think I tend to prefer the slightly wider focal length of this 20mm f1.7. So there's that. But two, the 20mm f1.7 seems to be a tad bit sharper, not by much, but a tad bit sharper wide open, which is surprising to me because I know this lens, you stop it down just a little bit. I think if you put this at 1.8 and this at 1.7, this might win or become equivalent in sharpness. But the other thing is the color rendition. This lens to me on the EM5 Mark III has that more like punchy, contrasty color, which is interesting because these Leica lenses are pretty contrasty themselves. I'll give you a couple examples, and the one is of the portrait of myself. I did a self-portrait, put it on a timer, again, same focus point, blah, blah, blah. And you can see the colors are a little bit more punchy or contrasty with this pancake lens. I tend to lean towards that a little bit. That's a personal preference, but something for you guys to notice. I'll hopefully have these up on the screen right now as I'm talking to you guys. The other thing I want you to notice is that the softness thing I talked about wasn't very apparent in any of those pictures because they're, in my opinion, they're all really sharp, wide open, except in that portrait photo. And again, I promise you guys I did everything identical. So I had the small focus point on my eye, I think it was this eye at the time, and I set it so I had a 2-second timer, and it was set up to focus and take the picture. And so I was already pre-focused, but then it focused again. I did it a few times, and I'll try to do it right now as I'm talking. I'll zoom into the eye of the 20mm lens, and I'll zoom into the eye of the 25mm lens. And I don't know if it comes through on the YouTube because all the compression and editing, but the 25 is a little soft on that photo. Now again, it's not every single time, but I noticed it a few times even with my son. I was taking pictures of him, and I don't know if it has something to do with like how the lens talks to the camera body and it confirms where the focus accuracy is. I don't know. Maybe you guys are technical, can speak to that, or maybe you guys can in the comment section below tell me I'm full of crap and you don't see it. But I'm noticing this lens to be a little bit sharper than this lens across the board, wide open, which is very interesting. I want to share that with you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section below. They're both fantastic lenses. I would take either one of these. But you know, in terms of like a little bit wider focal length, put it in my pocket, and some of the colors and contrast that comes out, I really like this lens. It's just a little slow to focus at times, especially in the dark, where this is much quicker to focus, and then you get the 1.4 versus the 1.7. So a little bit increase in depth of field, not only from compression, but aperture, and it's also, like I said, quieter and faster to focus. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.